Hey, Trekkers, what's going on? It's Eli, back with another review video, and I'm back, talking/reviewing more Star Trek Strange New Worlds. So now, finally, have come up to Season 3 of Strange New Worlds. Yeah. And so far, with what I've watched of Season 3, and yeah, this being my Part 1 review of Season 3 of Strange New Worlds, yes, the first two episodes that aired the same day. It was a two episode opener and such, because with shows on streaming, they'll do that sometimes. But yeah, anyways, so yeah, the first two episodes that start off the third season of Strange New Worlds. Yeah. Episode 1, which being a follow-up to the last episode of Season 2, this being Part 2 of Hegemony, if I'm saying that right, but again, me sometimes, and Episode 2, Wedding Bell Blues. Yeah, the first things I have to say about these two episodes that start off Season 3 of Strange New Worlds, well, they did not disappoint. After what Season 2 left off with Part 1, because where, once again, the Enterprise crew going toe-to-toe with the Gorn themselves, and especially when Captain Pike's girlfriend, also being a captain of a starship, got tangled up with the Gorn as well, and not to mention, because we would be introduced finally to a younger version of Montgomery Scott, yes, the chief engineer, whom would become the chief engineer of the Enterprise. And a lot of other crazy things happening, and not to mention that a rescue party from Lalan Singh and with the Doctor and Ortega, they were a part of this, and they were trying to save them, as well as Kirk's brother. They got captured and taken by the Gorn, and the situation that the Enterprise is in, and where it ends off, and where Part 2 continues, and it's a race to try to rescue the landing party, and for Pike's girlfriend to be rescued and saved with some Gorn, in her body, and Nurse Chapel doing her damnness to save her, and with Alon, the Doctor, and everyone else trying to figure out how to escape Gorn territory where they're at, and to send out a signal and in contact with the Enterprise crew. Yeah, really awesome. A great way for that being the opener for Season 3, and for that, yeah, being Part 2. And as for Wedding Bell Blues, well, because with what would be mentioned most prominently in Part 2, where for 3 months, Chapel would be disembarking for 3 months and such. And once she would return, and Federation Day is upon the Enterprise crew, the 100th anniversary of Federation Day, and Chapel arriving with her new boyfriend and such, and there's an alien entity that's shaping things up for Spock, because with how Spock feels about Chapel and her new boyfriend and all that, and this alien entity, this alien being and all that, godlike and such, fixing everything where, there's this wedding that happens for Spock and Chapel. However, Chapel's boyfriend being the only one that's not affected by this, and would manage to get Spock to snap out of it and realize that this is wrong, and they've got to confront this alien, godlike being, and to fix everything. Just just these first two episodes, they did not disappoint. Again, for them being the first two episodes of Season 3 of Strange New Worlds, and yeah, Season 3 off to a great start so far, and of course for me to continue the rest of the show. Because with how far Strange New Worlds has come along, and with the first two seasons and so on, yeah, it's just great to see that Strange New Worlds being one of the, new modern Star Trek shows that's really good. Everybody seems to really enjoy it. Okay, maybe not everybody, just, you get my point. And I'm sure that would go for some of you. Alright. But definitely for me, because I've really been enjoying Strange New Worlds. Yeah, but just again, the first two episodes for Season 3 of Strange New Worlds, excellent. But of course, I'm going to talk more about them, dive into them, yeah, in just a moment. And yeah, obviously you have to start with the first episode of Season 3. Yeah, Part 2 of Hegemony. Yeah. Okay, description / the story. With the first things I've had to say about the first 2 episodes done, out of the way, now dive into the episodes, starting with Episode 1. Alright, description / the story. Pike leads a risky rescue behind enemy lines as the landing party flees a deadly enemy. Which, of course, being the Gorn, as we know. Okay, so, now with reading the description / the story done, well, now, of course, to dive in / break down the Season 3 opener itself. Yep, Part 2, Hegemony. Okay, well, you know, the Enterprise having arrived at the rendezvous, Rendezvous, I think I'm butchering that word some, but, you know, with the fleet, and the USS Pablo Bisasso hails them in greeting, and Admiral April would beam aboard for a debrief. And, yeah, and this is after they escaped from the Gorn, luckily. And in sickbay, well, Chapel would attend to Pike's girlfriend, which, yeah, Captain Battelle, right. And giving her some more injections so that her body doesn't go necrotic, yeah, while in stasis, yeah, because again, on account of, like, Gorn eggs that are in her body, literally. And the prospect of being frozen solid is not something that Battelle is looking forward to. Yeah, because that's one way to keep her still alive and until they can get this out of her. And Chapel would say that they just need to work out the Gorn infection, and, well, she'll be up and about. Hopefully. That's what, you know, Chapel is determined to do and not give up on Battelle. And Battelle would counter that it could be a Rip Van Winkle thing for her, but Chapel sees her more as a sleeping beauty. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And Battelle would remind the nurse that if it looks like it's her or the crew, and she is to be taken out, and Japal would give her the sedative. However, the sedative given to Battelle would quickly go into shock, because apparently, you know, with it being injected into her body, well, her body rejected the serum. Apparently, what Chapel gave her, she's allergic to it. Oh, joy. Curse the allergic reaction thing. You know, that's a pain in the butt. Yeah. And Chapel would inform Pike on the bridge to inform him that, well, Battelle having the allergic reaction to Cry serum. That's the stuff that her body's allergic to. And yeah, it cannot be put into stasis. And, well, the Gorn will hatch from her body, gotta slow down, in less than a day. You know, and if that's the case, like, because it's hard to tell, but yeah, just overall, Chapel's saying that it's not going to be that long until whenever this happens, you know, and again, as she says, less than a day. And, you know, Chapel, throughout much of this episode, would be stuck on finding a treatment and wishing Joseph were there. Because, yeah, with the doctor himself, Joseph, having been captured by the Gorn, because, yeah, what else can Nurse Chapel do? And if Joseph were here, because, yeah, sure, it wouldn't take that long to try and figure this out to save Battelle. And Pike would send Spock to help before he would leave. Yeah, and Spock vows to dedicate all his abilities to Captain Battelle until the infection is resolved, until she is better. Yeah. And, meanwhile, and on the Enterprise, yeah, the scene between Pike and Admiral April, where, yeah, meeting in the Reading Room, and where April has ordered the Enterprise to stand by, and Pike would argue that the Gorn, well, they won't stop, and then go home after raiding the colonies. And April would then say that because the attacks happened outside the Federation, well, they have no jurisdiction, none whatsoever. That sucks. And that their obligation is to their member worlds that are part of the Federation, and rushing into another war is the last thing they need. Yeah, because, you know, it's just like how in the history of Star Trek that there was the Earth-Romulan War thing, if you know about that, for you hardcore Trekkers. Yeah, so they've had that, and definitely, because talk about what would come in, say, the 24th century when the Dominion War happened. Yeah, so at the time and setting of Strange New Worlds, they're not ready to go into another war, and especially with the Gorn. Yeah. You know, it's hard to tell what is worse, like, between, like, say, the Earth-Romulan War thing and with the Dominion War, and if there had been a war between, say, you know, the Federation and the Gorn, you know? Yeah, especially since, boy, the Federation was lucky not to be involved in that that war that was temporary, that it didn't go on that long. The Klingon Civil War, yeah, that happened in the events of the Next Generation. Anyways, so then what they would continue saying, well, Pike would say that the Gorn thinks they're weak, yeah, and that they will push the Hegemony line further and further into Federation space/territory until it'll be too late to do anything about it. Yeah, so what are the chances and all that? And, well, April, he would give Pike an official order to monitor the demigration line, but unofficially giving him unofficial orders to Pike and the Enterprise to punch back to show the Gorn they aren't prey. Good on April, because, yeah, nice to see that April being one of those very few rare admirals to give someone unofficial orders. It's not, you know, it's not often that an admiral in Starfleet would do that, right? Anyways, I need more of those in Star Trek, and good on April. Anyways, so, then in the science lab on the Enterprise, when, yeah, we once again see Scotty. Well, he's trying to get his device operational, the device that we saw him use and all that in Part 1, yeah. And Pelia, well, yeah, she starts to barricading Scotty for not recording a work-in-progress log. The chemistry between her and Scotty, oh, it's so good, yeah. And Pike would enter asking, you know, how long before they can get it working. And since they are heading into Gorn space/Gorn territory, yeah, well, Pelia would say that it will be up and running before they cross the Hegemony line while a panicked Scotty looks on. Yeah, because Scotty's trying his best. It's understandable in that kind of situation. Just like, yeah. And with how much time they have left, you know, there's not a lot of time. Anyways, and then what would happen next? Yeah, we would come to Lalonde, Joseph, and the others that have been captured by the Gorn, because on the Gorn destroyer, Lalonde would be the first to wake up in a sack, and, you know, claws her way out, and because she woke up from a nightmare, it, like, you know, flashback to her younger life and such, and when she first encountered the Gorn when she was a little girl. And yeah, she holds on to a ledge because, you know, she was almost about to fall to her death. And around her, she would see others also stuck in the sacks and slowly being digested. Yeah, that's not a good sign. And so she would free the Doctor himself first, and then they would free Kirk's brother, then Ortega's. And Ortega's, well, when she would get out, she would notice that part of her hand is missing. Yeah, because burned like acid, melted like acid and all that. Yikes. And yeah, the fact that they would learn that they're in a massive digestive chamber in the Gorn destroyer and surrounded by thousands of other sacks with other hostages, and each holding a person. Yeah, hostage/person. And Kirk would find a phaser rifle and Lalonde too, and while seemingly suffering from PTSD. Yeah, that's what she's suffering. Poor gal. And, you know, she says that she doesn't want to save just a handful of colonists. She wants to save all of them. Well, let's hope so. Yeah, because, I mean, the situation that they're in, we can only hope so. Yeah. And back in the science lab on the Enterprise, well, Scotty is still... he still hasn't managed to get the device working, because, yeah, the kind of pressure that's put on him and the stuff that he's working with being complicated is, yeah. However, Pelia, well, she would run in screaming that the Gorn are here, and this is where Scotty would rush in, just put all the stuff together, quickly rigs the device into working order, just in time, but did we know where this was coming? Because, okay, first off, the Enterprise did not go under red alert. That's one biggie, but how did Scotty not realize that? Yeah, and right as he put it together, it's all finished, complete, yeah, just in time for Pike to call down, the science lab and saying that they're about to enter Gorn territory in their space. That wasn't funny to Scott. I don't blame him, but hey, at least he fixed it. He managed to get it all put together. Good for him. And on the bridge, well, they would drop out of warp and they would start up a transponder, and though it could also be seen as a modified EM pulse emitter, yeah, according to Uhura, the Gorn don't use optical data. Interesting. And they've evolved, so they rely on biomatrix. Yeah, I think I'm saying that right. And also, yeah, heat and EM signatures. And the Gorn hunters, well, they would approach the Enterprise, but they would fly by without noticing the Enterprise. And they still have a signal from the Wolkite, yeah, which does indicate that the ship is headed into a binary star system. Interesting. Not a good sign, I don't think. And with unusual stellar activity and very high radiation, well, Pike would order them to follow. And as they would warp away, he looks down at a small screen on his armchair, because, yeah, he has that on his captain's chair, and checking up on the status of Batel. And, yeah, because with what's going on back in sickbay, because, yeah, in sickbay, well, Spock joining alongside with Nurse Chapel, they are studying Batal, noting that her biochemistry has been severely altered. Yikes. And that the Gorn hatching and her body are equally dependent on each other. And almost like gonna give us like alien vibes when you say so, because the egg of the xenomorph being, what I'm talking about, just like, yeah, kind of sounding very similar, but still. Well, so far every simulation that they have run has had no positive effect. And no matter what they try to do, Batel's human DNA is inadequate. And Spock would take the opportunity for a moment to apologize for the way things ended before she left. Yeah, and Chapel, she does accept his apology. That's a good thing. But she reaffirms that she is not good with complicated details and all that, and that she will still be going away for 3 months to study with Dr. Roger Corby. Yeah. And Chapel, well, she would come up with an idea to use Una's Ilorane, yeah, I think I'm saying it right, yeah, her blood, yeah, it is designed to be combat infections in real time, and with injecting plasma, well, it could provide a boost to Batel's immunity, and that should be a good thing. Then, back on the Gorn Destroyer, well, the team, they would spot a hangar and go over the plan to get the transport codes to the Enterprise as they head out. And in the reading room back on the Enterprise, well, Una and Uhura, and Una, aka Number 1, they both would explain how they've been poring over all available data on the Gorn. Data, and they discovered that every Gorn sighting, well, it correlates to a pattern of specific stellar events. And both activity and inactivity following the pattern. Interesting. And under the right conditions, well, they would become docile. docile. I think, hope I'm saying that right. And the data suggests that they could be in the beginning of a long cycle of Gorn aggression. Yeah, and the attacks could signal what could soon be a full-scale Gorn invasion. Yep, a full-blown attack, from the Gorns. And when the briefing is finished and number one says to Chapel and Spock know what they're doing, well, she trusts them with a couple of liters of her blood, and Captain Pike would take her stating that it may be her only hope. Because, yeah, what are the chances? And there's not that much left to try to figure out, because that's the best they've got, and it could possibly work. 100%. Yeah. And in Sick Bay, well, there's another simulation that has been run testing the treatment with number one's blood, and the fatality rate is at 86. Okay, well, that's a good sign. Yeah, that's good to know. And it's the first simulation that has given her any chance at all. Yep, and back on the Enterprise bridge, well, Mitchell is feeling the strain of being on the bridge for so long, and, well, Pike would tell her to call for relief. However, her response is that she does not want to leave her station until everyone is back on board. And that's good to know from her, because it's very important, because how can she leave the bridge, and just, if by any chance they would not come back? That's understandable. Yeah. And, well, the ship itself, it would approach the enemy destroyer, the Gorn destroyer, that is. But, however, it has entered in the radiation zone. And should the Enterprise go any deeper into the star system, and the crew could be at risk, big risks with, because radiation, all that. This is a radiation zone, for crying out loud, But, Pike, what he would do next, and yeah, and also, like, through the view screen, they would see a Hunter Gorn ship seemingly fly into the star, and the Gorn Hunter ship would shut down power, and it flat out disappears. And Pike, well, taking quite the risk and ordering all auxiliary power to the shields. Yep, that whole thing in Star Trek at times. Auxiliary power to the shields, or transport all power to weapons. Just, yeah, I love that kind of stuff, because any way possible when it comes to shields or weapons and all that. Having very clever ways. I love that. Anyways, and yeah, so they are going to follow the Gorn Hunter ship, and Mitchell would warn that another CME flare is coming. It's going to. Back in sickbay, Battelle is coding, and the Gorn hatchings are activating. And their growth, by this point, has been accelerated. I think I'm butchering that word some, but you know what I'm saying. Just, yeah. Well, because, yeah, Spock, he would then say that at 14% chance, at a 14% chance of survival is better than certain death. Good point, Spock. And the two, well, they would prepare for her surgery. Yep, it's up to them still to do whatever it takes to do this surgery officially. Okay, then, what would happen next? The Enterprise, well, still getting into a ping of the Walt Kite signal. Well, Una, number one, that is, yeah, would say that they need to get to their people while they still can. However, according to Mitchell, the men's magnetize, yeah, butchering that word some, but yeah, bear with me still, fields make the navigation impossible. Yeah, and this explains why the Gorn themselves, well, they go into a free fall, and they would let the gravity wells do most of the work for them. Yeah, and the Enterprise, well, having no visuals on the ship or what's beyond the binary stars. So what now? Well, once they would pass through it that are essentially invisible. Yeah, Pike wonders if this could be the Gorn homeworld. Could it be, I wonder? Yeah. Well, and then suddenly, they would see an armada coming out of the binary star system, and they are headed straight for Federation territory. Well, what would happen next? Pike orders Uhura to warn Starfleet, but, they won't be able to confirm if they've received the message. Yeah. But, yeah, Pike, he would then say that they need to go. Get clear of the system, interference, and, well, Uhura would then say that she's not sure they'll be able to reestablish the Wolkite signal. And if they leave, they may lose the landing party and the colonists. Yeah, they might lose them forever. And then they would launch a long-range communications buoy that was recommended by number one to send out a buoy, because, yeah, now by this point they're out of options. So, yeah, good on number one by recommending that, a communications buoy. And to tie a signal to it, so, of course they can come back for them. Knowing exactly where they have to be, the exact same spot, and from there on. Yeah. And back on sickbay on the Enterprise, well, Chapel and Spock, well, they are about to prepare to operate on Batel. Looking down on Batel, Chapel would say that if it goes sideways, it's Vallejo Beta. Yeah, I think I said it right. All over again. And, well, then she would inject the experimental plasma solution into Batel. Yeah, and not to mention that they've put sickbay under quarantine. Yep, so it's just the three of them inside sickbay. And having those, special, sickbay, red uniforms, that, for any certain, surgery or whatever that happens, yeah, all those Starfleet medical doctors and all that, always having to have those. Anyways, so, back on the bridge, there is still no response from Starfleet, and the Gorn themselves, well, are transmitting an interference signal, and that the ships still can't go to warp, and the Gorn ships are much faster than they are. Yeah, they have that speed ability much more than, say, the Enterprise and any other starship at that time. Yeah, and by the time the Enterprise would get into it gets signal out, and managing to, get, signal territory and all that, well, the Gorn, well, would be right on top of the outer Federation worlds. And Pike does ask if they are within shooting distance where they can, shoot at the Gorn on their ships. However, Chin Riley points out that they wouldn't stand a chance at all against an armada. And, well, Pike would call down to, the science lab and asking Pelia to come on the bridge, and Scotty would then tag along with her as well. And Pike, he has an idea to use Uhura and Chin Riley's theory that solar flares dictate the Gorn's hunting and resting cycles, and since they know what kind of radiation signature, all they need to do is create a solar flare themselves, and they need to become a CMEX flare. But Scotty stepping in and saying that turning the Enterprise into an artificial star is nearly impossible, but Pelia points out that it's not possible. Yeah, because it was never achieved before, but maybe it can this time, officially. Now is the time to achieve this. And according to Scotty, it's 1 in 1,000 that, it could get it done right, or don't blow themselves up along the way. Yeah, of course they don't want the no risks of the Enterprise wanting to be blown up, right? Yeah. And for everyone to die. Well, Pike, he would then say he doesn't like those odds, but just to turn it off before they blow up. Yeah. Then back in sickbay, well, Batel is responding flavorably to the transfusion, and, well, Chapel readies to make the first in session. Yeah. And at the last minute, well, Mr. Spock would stop her and says that most likely outcome is the death of Captain Batel, and that that they are looking at it from the wrong perspective. Yeah, because they just didn't see it until now. Spock was the first to notice this. And instead of operating on Batel, what if it was like the other way around? They treated the Gorn inside her. And they know with the Gorn emerging to feed, yeah, what if they fed it to keep it from coming out? So there we go. And like I just said, like, it's backwards. Yeah, they got it backwards when, yeah, instead of doing it to Batel, doing it to the Gorn. And, good chance still that could still save Batel. But anyways, yeah, so once they are not in defensive mode and dissolve them and use Chin Riley's Alarian, plasma, to fight the multitude of affections, well, there is no time to run another simulation, because, yeah, they did it once, and they had time for that, but not for a second one. Nope, they've got to do this now. And Spock would speak to J'Pel own words to her that perhaps they just need a little faith. And they do so, yeah. And back on the Gorn Destroyer, well, Lalonde, the Doctor, Kirk, and Ortega's, well, they're trying to make their way to the hangar so they can try to steal a Gorn ship, but Lalonde would find an interface saying that they had them on the Gorn breeding planet, and she would start to tell them that something about her brother, Manu, yeah, and in a bit of flashbacks that we see in this episode of her brother, Manu, but would get lost in memories, and the Doctor attempts to comfort her, saying that, she is there right now, not back on the breeding planet, yeah, and she counters that that here isn't great either. And then she would remember something about something and would put her hands on the interface and activates. And Kirk would reflect that he would love to take it apart and see how it works. Yeah, who can blame him? And the Doctor would then see what looks like buffer signatures, and Lalonde would confirm that they are, and she also sees the transport codes, and if they can get to the Enterprise, they can save those colonists. And, well, then they would hear the sound and would see the Gorn rushing towards them. Yep, a herd of Gorn, because, oh yeah, that's not a good sign. So then, yeah, with the Gorn rushing toward them, Lalonde would shoot to get to the ship, like take down the Gorn. I mean, she didn't see the Gorn running toward her from behind. Yeah, because there's one Gorn that runs, behind her, and it would jump and land right behind, and she would turn around shocked, and the Doctor would then shoot at it, and Kirk ran toward it, firing his weapon, and it would hit the Gorn and sending him flying. And Ortega's, well, she started to shoot at the Gorn, but it impales her in the stomach. Oh my gosh, if her hand, being melted like acid isn't enough, then, like, poor girl just, like, being, impaled in her stomach? Oh my gosh, like, Ortega's by this point can't catch a break, and can only hope that she makes it through this, yeah. And yeah, seeing what is happening, Lalonde, she would then run toward them and put the weapon right at the Gorn's, neck and blowing its head off, literally. Oh, I love that. Yeah, that's what the Gorn deserved, and on account of Lalonde, her history of the Gorn, that is. Well, coming back to the Enterprise, because, yeah, by approaching the binary stars, number one would remind them that the moment they shut down the EM emitter, every Gorn ship is going to come after them. Every single one of them. Pike then declares that's exactly what they want, and orders the crew to make them shine like the sun. And boom, that's what happens. And then the crew on the Gorn Destroyer, well, they are slowly making their way to the Hunter ship, stealing one, and those severely wounded, Ortega's says to help her get into the pilot seat. Only she can drive it. Only her. because her being a master at piloting ships and all that. Yep. And groaning with the effort she takes the controls and, yeah, piloting them away while evading hunter ships firing at them. Yep, avoiding, them being targeted and such. Yeah, let's hope they make it. And back on the Enterprise, well, nearing critical levels of radiation, and Mitchell would then report that the Gorn have broken ranks and are headed toward the Enterprise, and number one picks up a signal from the communication signal, and it's Lalonde. Yeah, they finally managed to reach out to the Enterprise, and yeah, sending the transport codes to the Enterprise, telling them to beam the Parnasans, the colonists, that is, beam them out of the hunter ship of the Gorn. And as the hull integrity of the Enterprise approaches critical failure, well, the ship would then glow intensely enough to cause the Gorn ships to retreat and return home. Yep, go into, hibernation and such, as they describe. And Pike would then order for it to be turned off, and yeah, because the way that those shots were done and like the motion and all that was really cool. Yeah. So by turning it off, Uhura then reports that the transport codes did work, and that several of the 100 colonists have been beamed safe and sound on board. And Lalonde then would hail them, saying that they need to be beamed out immediately, and also, yeah, needing a medical team on account of Ortegas. Yeah. Luckily, she then managed to make it through this. When how severe the wounds were from her stomach and all that. No, she did make it. I was glad to know that Ortegas did survive, because that would have sucked if she died, because how far that character has come, she's really good. Yeah. And I know I've established that before. Anyways, so then Scotty would report that they are using the transport codes to hack into the Gorn Hunter, and it should be in just a moment. Yeah. Then number one would say that, yeah, they did it, and that they triggered a long hibernation, yeah, what I say, in the Gorn to go into hibernation for quite a while. Then Pike says that he can't help but wonder if they didn't just create a problem for someone else to solve later. Well, time will tell, and where that's going to lead to in Star Trek. Yeah. I mean, hey, even say on account of the TOS episode, the original, TOS short for the original series, Yeah, I'm talking about, of course, the episode Arena, because in that episode, where the Gorn emerges, so, yeah. Yeah, it's hard to tell. Anyways. Then Uhura would report that they're getting a secure line from Admiral April, and they just got their priority message and asks how much time they have until the Gorn get here, and Pike in response informing April that they should ignore the last transmission and that, they won't be seeing the Gorn for a while, and informing that, they managed to take down the Gorn and such. Yeah, strike back and all that. And, yeah. And, yeah, because, again, Ortega's, with her bleeding heavily, she does manage to make it all right, as I said. Well, afterwards, yeah, because they beamed out of there, and they're on the Enterprise safe and sound, yeah. Well, when we come back to Spock and Chapel, yeah, and leaving sickbay, she would say that they did all they could, and it's in Captain Patel's hands now, with whatever's going to happen to her next. Hopefully nothing bad. And giving Spock a kiss on the cheek. Yeah, Chapel thanks him, that's her way of thanking him, and that she couldn't have done it without him. Yeah, because without Spock, who knows how this would have all turned out. Without Spock's, logic and all that, his brain and all that, being smart. And he says that, you're welcome, and yeah, he walks away. And as Pike would approach the outside of sickbay and checking on how Batel is doing, and, in response, Chapel, says that, she's still in recovery, and number one would report to Pike that the landing party is accounted for. Yep, because with how Erica Ortegas is doing, good to know. And, Pike ordering that they chart a course for Earth as soon as they're clear from the radiation bands. And, taking a breath, Pike would enter the room where Patel is lying, and letting the events of the day catch up with him, says, "Okay, Dad, you win." And then he would start to do the Lord's Prayer, "Our Father, who art thou in heaven." And Patel is awake, and she would wake up and assume, the tiny Gorn didn't pop out of her. And, that it didn't kill anybody. No, that didn't happen. It's all good, Patel. And Pike would then tell her that Spock and J'Pel, they came up with a treatment where, she's not out of the, she's not out of the woods yet, despite the treatment that Spock and Chapel gave. And she asks, how, so he would tell her that, Una, aka Number One, helped with a sample of her blood. That's good to know. Because he would also mention that, he's already lost too much, and, and can they set what might or might not happen aside, and, let him help her? And, she would answer that, she's still here on board the Enterprise, because, she's not going anywhere, because, Pike just not wanting anything, bad for her to happen, and hopefully nothing, because, as the show would proceed, we'll find out, I'm sure. But, it was a great way for that episode to end, and on account, it ends with Pike and Batel, because happily reunited, and Batel is in good shape, in good health, hopefully so, and with how, J'Pel and Spock handled with, the Gorn inside of her. That's good to know. But, what a great way, how Season 3 starts off with the first episode. Part 2, Hegemony. That was a great opener for Season 3, and, the conclusion of what started in Part 1 with the Gorn and all that. It did not disappoint. Just overall, Episode 1, the opener for Season 3, excellent. All right. Now, with Episode 1 out of the way, now come to Episode 2, which being titled, as I said early on, Wedding Bell Blues. All right, description / the story. At a Federation celebration, as I did mention early on, an uninvited guest disrupts Spock and the crew's reflections. Okay, so now to break down / dive in the episode itself. As the Federation fleet would gather around for Starbase 1, the USS Enterprise, nearing the end of a 3-month billet to repair of the damages and all that due to the Gorn incident, the Federation Day is upon them in only 3 days, and again, this being the 100th anniversary of Federation Day. Because, the founding of the United Federation of Planets, which happened in first contact with humans and Vulcans, as we all know. And of course, when it came to Enterprise. Because Enterprise, having been a follow-up to, First Contact and all that. Anyways, we would first see Lalan Noonien Singh helping Spock practice dance moves for the upcoming gala, and admitting that, the looming threat of the Gorn had interrupted her dreams of becoming a prima ballerina, even doing a ballerina pose, and beating the Hegemony freed Lalan to explore her other interests. Good for her. She deserves it. And though she expresses concern over Spock's intention to make a grand romantic gesture upon Chapel's return, Ensign Uhura would hail Spock, indicating that, Chapel is returning and coming on board the Enterprise after being away for 3 months, as was explained. And Spock and Lalan would make their way into the transporter room, and where Scotty is there to energize and all that transport, and, briefly observing a sensor ghost outside of the Enterprise. Scotty noticed this, but it went away. It was only briefly, but it's going to be more than just briefly, obviously. With what Scotty said, a ghost and all that, probably more than just that. then by transporting Chapel on board, well, Spock has a present for Chapel, presenting her a gift, and yeah, it being the first edition of the Saltavanator Torner. I think I'm butchering that word some, but I think you know what I'm saying, yeah. And before Chapel would announce that she has brought Corby along as her date to the celebration. Yep, because this is where we are introduced to Dr. Roger Corby in person, and Roger being played by Cillian O'Sullivan. So yeah, and obviously, you know, it starts to get a bit awkward and such. Yeah. With especially Chapel announcing that Dr. Corby is her date to the Federation Day. And elsewhere on the ship, yeah, well, Lieutenant Erica Ortigas would introduce Uhura to her little brother, Beto, in the gym. Yeah, because, you know, of course, the Enterprise having to have a gym room. And while Ensign Dana Gamble draws blood from Commander Una Chin Riley, aka Number 1, in sickbay, well, Dr. Joseph himself would announce that Gamble has been permanently assigned to the Enterprise, and where Captain Marie Battelle has fully re-besorted the Gorn embryos, and having minor after effects managed and all that, yeah. And Battelle, well, a moment between Battelle and Pike in his quarters, and nothing that Admiral Robert April promised her the chance to select her next command. Yeah, because after the loss of her, you know, after the loss of the ship that she was captain of, well, yeah, what's next for her? Well, yeah, obviously, yeah, other opportunities for her and, like, what she wants to do and to take command of. Well, they would discuss their future, and, you know, because with whatever assignment she signs up to, then, yeah, like, two that she brings up that are kind of far away, and her not being able to see each other and all that. But, hopefully so they can figure something out. And, well, then, coming back to Chapel, whom pays a visit to Spock in his own quarters to return his gift. Ouch. Spock would express confusion, yeah, you know, over what has transpired between them. But unbeknownst to him, a mysterious figure would appear outside of the viewpoint, because that whole ghost thing that Scotty brought up, yeah, obviously. Yeah, and that has plans for Spock, obviously. He heard everything, clearly. Well, the crew would then converge on the port galley, and where Ortigas would pick up on casual flirtations between her brother and her best friend Uhura. Yeah, because keep in mind that she, you know, her and Uhura are best friends, and she's not really getting a kick out of this. But it's nice to see that it didn't take too long for, say, Uhura to find Ortiga's brother attractive, both finding each other attractive. Good for them. Well, Kirk's brother, yeah, George Sam Kirk, that's his full name, he would ask Dr. Corby about the archaeological expedition to Vadia 9, but Spock would arrive just as Chapel is about to share the details about their romantic climb up to Mount Caleb, yeah. The Vulcan, which of course means Spock, insists that they continue, like, you know, he doesn't want them to stop. And Chapel would then explain that her mother's last words were, "I hope you find the sun, and the moon, and the stars," and which inspired their trek. Interesting. And yeah, Mount Caleb breaks the solar plane, and allowing the sun and moon to be visible simultaneously. So then Corby would you know, bring up Chapel, brought Chapel there on their mother's birthday to gift her with a bracelet mode from Tellurian star gems, which apparently, according to them, it's very rare. Yeah, because they're surprised to see that, the Doctor managed to find this. And what a very sweet thing for him to give that to Chapel. However, Spock, he struggles with the story and retreating to the bar, and where he would encounter the being from his window. Yeah, which being Trelane. However, he's most prominently credited as the wedding planner, and the wedding planner being played by Rice Darby, whom I most prominently know in the Jumanji films. Welcome to Jumanji. That's him. But he's been in a lot of other great stuff. He's a great actor. He's so enjoyable. And he, of course, does not disappoint as Trelane, but being credited as the wedding planner. Yeah. Yeah, it's great to see that bringing that kind of character into another Star Trek show. I mean, ever since Trelane himself in the original series, then Q and all that, just, yeah. Anyways, so, yeah, Trelane being the wedding planner, well, he apparently, from Spock's vision, but not to us, he's a Vulcan bartender, but us, the audience, the viewers, we don't see that. We see him as his true form. And he does that a couple of other times. Well, Trelane would then mix Spock a drink before he would head back to his quarters. And once he took that drink and made his way back to his quarters, and yeah, bedtime, well, the next morning, he would wake up alongside with Christine. Yeah, this is the wedding planner's, this is his, what's the word I'm looking for? His doing. Yeah, his doing. With what the hell's happening next. Apparently, Spock and Christine are due to be married. Yeah, her, being the bride and all that. And they're on Starbase 1. And, yeah, because on the same day, Federation Day, is their wedding day. And Trelane, being the bartender, having returned, and this time under the guise of an Andorian wedding planner. So now he's taken the form of an Andorian from the character's point of view, not us, the audience, because again, we see him as whom he is. But I like that, because that detail, that attention to detail where Trelane / the wedding planner is looking himself like in a mirror and all that to kind of like touch up his hair and all that, and we can see in the reflection, like, when he's a Vulcan or an Andorian. I like that, and that's important. Of course, like, for us, we got to get a little taste that, yeah, he is going by those forms, but we're just not seeing it. Only the characters are. You see what I mean? Just like, yeah, very cool, very cool. Well, Spock, what would happen next? Because, yeah, again, with Spock and Chapel to be married, well, apparently, Corby, whom is Chapel's best man, well, he would bring the cake. When we see Corby, he would bring the cake in, but Trelane / the wedding planner would quickly dismiss him. Yeah, because knowing how Spock feels towards Corby and all that, because, yeah. And then he would introduce the couple to the fusion-style cake that he calls the Hukin or Volman, because, yeah, with what the wedding planner felt would be best for Spock, and since, this wedding is more humanized and not really Vulcanized, yeah, that's understandable. So that was very funny and clever. Either Hucan or Volman, just like taking some of those words and funny. And with his clients dissatisfied, Trelane would then snap his fingers and would transform the cake samples into a delicious, chocolatey Vulcan Paklor. Hope I'm saying that right, yeah. Just certain words in science fiction. Not that I'm complaining, just, have to be complicated and try to pronounce. Anyways. All right, and yeah, they do taste delightful. And Trelane, well, he assumes that there won't be a Caliphie situation when the flowers from the wedding of Chapel's mother turn up dead. Yeah. And Trelane, he would Revengornet. I'm having trouble pronouncing that word. Basically, to put this, make them better and fresh, with a second snap. Yep. And although Trelane, he would envisions everyone as happy as a terrain bat, Corby actually attempts to inject before he dismissed once again. Yeah, and apparently it turns out that Corby happens to be the only one not affected by this. He knows what's going on. Being the only one. How did this happen? How did Trelane miss this? Beats me. Well, back on the Enterprise, well, Corby, he would break into Spock's quarters, and, of course, yeah, Spock noticed that he tried to break in, and yeah, this is where Corby tries to tell Spock and insists that reality has shifted and that the wedding isn't supposed to happen whatsoever, and noting that he and Christine are involved romantically, not her and Spock, not anymore. And as Corby would recite the words to a Pablo Neruda, if I'm saying the last name right, yeah, poem that preceded his first kiss with Nurse Chapel, well, Spock would suddenly lash. And you can start to see the anger in Spock's eyes, and then when Spock would lash out and punch him, knock him out. But right after he did that, yeah, the emotional outburst would then seem to trigger Spock, his awareness of the truth, and that, yeah, now he realizes that, yeah, this is not real. So now he's the second and only one alongside with Corby that knows that none of this is real. And when Corby would regain consciousness, yeah, Spock would apologize, of course, and explaining that, yeah, after he punched him, that's when it struck him that, yeah, now he can see that none of this is real. He's out of that spell from Trelane. And Spock would then theorize over the root cause of the mass delusion, an alternate dimension, and all that jazz. Yeah, and the exposure to a environmental hallucination. Yep, that'd be another thing. Alien virus, all that stuff is, yeah. But Corby, on the other hand, aids that something interferes whenever he tries to stop the wedding. And Spock posits that this is an advanced intelligent life form with reality-altering capabilities, and it would lead to the Doctor to it leads them to the Doctor to the science lab as they can scan the ship, and the pair discuss the notion that Spock's angry punch coupled with a surge of ordaline and cortisol. I know I'm butchering some of those words, but you know what I'm saying, yeah. And yeah, could have broken the hold of the false reality, possibly. And when Sam Kirk steps in the science lab, well, Spock, he tries to present him with the truth about the unknown phenomenon to no avail, and the computer would inform Spock that there are no anomalies, energy readings present on the Enterprise whatsoever. And so he and Corby, well, they would head to the captain's quarters. Even, like, say, after, Spock tried to get Pike to punch him, and when Spock tried to insult him, well, that didn't work. Yeah. Well, then they would make their way to Pike's quarters to alert Pike about this. However, they would find themselves in the midst of Spock's own bachelor party, just the men. You know how bachelor parties work. And to complete the jumbo mollusk, Paktar, yeah, the Luckdrog and Sorain brandy, yeah. Those gathered would fail to react to Spock's urgence, like an admission about telling them about the mass delusion, and, well, this would leave Spock and Corby to suppose that love might actually be the emotional key to breaking through their hands. And to the crew, and they're not snapping out of this, they assume that Spock's getting cold feet. Yeah, but Spock addresses at one point that his feet are warm. That's a good way to put at it. That he's perfectly fine. He's not getting that feeling of cold feet. And besides, even though he is human, he's still Vulcan because he chose the Vulcan side. Yeah. Anyways, so yeah, Vulcans they don't get cold feet, and in the case of Spock, because again he chose the Vulcan side. Anyways. Well, then Corby, he would play a hunch, and the Enterprise computer would detect one life form, detect, I'm sorry, not defect, detect, one life form that cannot be attributed, to the crew manifest or wedding guest list. Yep. And yeah, once they discover whom it is, they would track that individual to the port galley and where they would find Trelane himself. And Spock would confront him, and recognizing that Trelane had also been the bartender when Spock wished things could be different with him and Christine. Yeah. Not being because he was disguised as the Vulcan bartender. Yep. So, and I assume that, because by this point, Spock and Corby, they can now see his true form. Obviously, yeah. Well, then Trelane would declare that he can do anything he wants. And say, by snapping his fingers and sending the ship to red alert with another snap, and Spock would awake in his quarters with Trelane by his side, and even say, putting Spock in a glass bottle, just doing whatever the heck he wants. And they got to play by his game. So they have no other choice but to cooperate, under Trelane. And as the guests would gather aboard Starbase 1, well, Spock would take his place on the altar and would watch Chapel make her way down the aisle. And by the way, when we cut to Starbase 1, and the camera panning and just, flying straight to Starbase 1, we hear a sample of the wedding music, dun, dun, da, da, but it's in that same style as it was in the original series. If you recall and know that in the episode Balance of Terror, there's a wedding happening, and the way that music plays, exactly! I love that! That's amazing! Yeah. Call back to how certain pieces of music were played in Star Trek. You know what I mean? Just that's good. I love that. Well, Trelane would then act as the officiant. Obviously, of course he would. But Corby, not wasting any time, he would object to the wedding, and Trelane would silence, Corby by turning him into a dog. And nobody is affected by this. One wedding guest does let out an "aww." Kirk's brother, because he's holding on to the leash. Oh, poor Corby. And then Spock, well, it's up to him, because, he would then begin to deliver his vows by quoting the Nerode, maybe I got it right this time, I don't know, but again, me sometimes, as a means to remind her of her love for Corby. And luckily, the ploy succeeds. Chapel snaps out of it, realizing that none of this should be happening. Yep. And knowing, seeing and knowing the truth once more. And, with them not proceeding with this, not getting married or anything like that, well, this causes Trelane to be furious and starting to make threats and to kill everyone in the room, and giving some insults, like one wedding guest with this crown design on top of her head, and one alien with no mouth, and so on. However, that would be interrupted when a glowing green specter arrives and confronting Trelane. And that glowing green specter turns out to be Trelane / the wedding planner's dad. And it's in that same style, where we have this glowing green specter, because, just like in the original series, where in that episode with Trelane, we see his parents, they're glowing green specters. I love that. And the voice of Trelane / wedding planner's dad, and which being credited alien parent, was none other than Q himself, good old John Delancey. Of course it would have to be John Delancey. Who else? And by the way, fun fact, because, when John Delancey first read for Q and when Next Generation began with the pilot encounter at Farpoint, Delancey saw some similarities to Q with Trelane. And John Delancey, having known Star Trek and had known about the character of Trelane, he saw some similarities. And, in fact, that those that were a part of Next Generation, when they knew what Gene Roddenberry was writing in the script, the character of Q, they all felt that, oh, this is Trelane all over again. And Roddenberry assured them that, this was going to work. And he was right. He would turn out to be right. the character of Q did work. More improved, alien god and such. Yeah, good, nice to see. But, still, that episode with Trelane, it was still a good episode. Even, how any Trekkers would feel about it to this day, But anyways, getting back on point, because, yeah, with the glowing green specter, the alien parent having arrived, well, he manifests above him. Yeah, and, and Dad, chastises him and would returning Corby to his human form and telling the crowd that Trelane is a child of only 8,000 years old. Yeah, Earth years and all that. Yeah. And Spock inquires why Trelane interfered, and the entity would explain that he saw Corby digging on his homeworld and found him to be annoyingly perfect. And Trelane would then snap one last time, freeing the guests from the false reality. Yeah, they're out of that, and the spell's broken. Now they're seeing what's legit. Yeah. And before he would convert himself into his non-corporal state. Yep, as another glowing green entity, Spectre and such. And he would leave alongside with his father, and that's the last we see of Trelane for now, until they would encounter him once again and all that in the original series. Yeah. Well, and then Pike, attempting to salvage the event of with the impromptu Federation Day speech, ultimately dismissing everyone to open the bar. Just like, so much for the speech, just, let's just open the bar and have a good time. Yeah. And then, we would then see a three-armed Adosian. Yeah, I said that right. Whom is a bartender named Kessling. And Kessling being played by Kira Gulian. I hope I might have butchered her last name some, but again, me sometimes. And by the way, this marks the first time we ever see an Odyssean in live-action form, because, with that alien species first appearing in the Star Trek animated series, with Eric's. But it's great to see that now they finally brought that alien species to life in live action. And also it was great to see that, that alien species would make a comeback in, say, Lower Decks. And now to see that alien species in live action, oh, that's great. Yeah. And by the way, if you recall with Eric's, well, because he's got three arms, like, the third arm is, like, right here, like, at the chest. But in the case of the female Adosian, well, the third arm is on her back. I guess we can assume that maybe the females, they have their third arms on their back, or maybe it's a mix. Some males have the third arm on their chest, and some have the third arms, just possibly, that's what I'd like to think, but anyways, but probably so, because, I'm sure, thinking about it, because it could be possible, because, with whatever the Adosians, however they look, and with their three arms, rather the third arm is in the front or the back, just, alright. Continuing on, because we would see one as a bartender, and, she's preparing drinks, and, Pike is, considering on having her, be a part of Starfleet, be in a position in Starfleet, and she's interested. Yeah, she'll take it. Good for her. And especially that would lead to where, in the events of the animated series, we would see an Adosian on the bridge, which of course being Eric's, and I can assume that was the beginning of that alien species serving in Starfleet. Nice. Alright, but anyway, so then we would then see, Dr. Joseph greeting a Ongovian delegate, and Chapel and Corby, they conserve about all that transpired and opting to never talk about it again. And back at the bar, because like I said, that's where Pike and number one herself offering Kesseling the job aboard the Enterprise. And while Beto informs Uhura that the Chancellor of Starfleet's public relations may commission him to create a feature-length documentary all about Starfleet. Because, yeah, this was shown a couple of times where Beto has a hovercrafting film camera. And yeah, because he had it in the gym where he and his sister were boxing and all that, and she punched it, and just, yeah, then having it at that wedding, just like, yeah, interesting. I like that. And then Spock would linger alone and eyeing Chapel and Corby as they dance, and Lalonde would step in and would take a seat with Spock, and pointing out that it'd be a waste for, you know, the Vulcan himself not to display his dancing skills. And, you know, Wham's woke me up before you go erupts, you know, the jitterbug, you know, that's really cool. Like, you know, hearing that song in Star Trek, you know, wake me up before you go, just like, yeah, how can we not enjoy that song? And yeah, everybody on the dance floor dancing to it, some of them just dancing by themselves, like, yeah, Scotty and a few others, and some of them dancing with some of the aliens, like, yeah. But like, say in the case of, you know, Corby and Chapel, yeah, they're dancing together, and so was Pike and Battelle. And yeah, Spock and Lalonde, they would join the others dancing as well in the jubilant celebration. Yep. And Pike would notice that Ortegas has made a discreet exit, and with the helm officer choosing to exercise her emotions in the Enterprise gym room. And as, well, Ortegas would take a break from her punching bag, she would store out the viewpoint and as a ominous vision of a ferocious Gorn is standing behind her. Yeah, because I don't blame her, because, yeah, the drama she dealt with the Gorn, because this close to dying, because with her hand, like, gone to acid and one of the Gorns stabbed her right through the chest, impaling her. I don't blame her, because, yeah, that's not gone away from her just yet. You know, poor Ortegas. But rest assured that, you know, she should be great to know that she's alive and well. You know, what happened is in the past. Yeah, but again, it's understandable. She has not gotten over it just yet. And it's going to take some time. It's understandable. Also, to acknowledge whom plays Ortegas' brother. Yeah, Beto Ortegas being played by Minor Lucan. But yeah, I mean, with how much we've gotten of Beto and such, good character. Yeah, and his chemistry and all that with Uhura. You know, just have to wait and see how this goes along, you know, with this relationship that just about started between Beto and Uhura. Yeah, but that's the second episode for Season 3 of Strange New Worlds. Yep. Wedding Bell Blues was another good episode, and for it being the second episode of Season 3 of Strange New Worlds, yeah, with what it had to offer, with the appearance of Trelane, what he does, making an alternate reality, you know, where Spock and Chapel are about to be happily married, and with Dr. Corby just being the only one that knows this is not legit, and managing to get Spock to realize this, and their attempts to try to figure out how to take down Trelane, and just to get everyone to snap out of it, and all taking place on the Enterprise and Starbase 1, just, yeah, and all happening around the time of Federation Day, man. And with appearances of Ortegas' brother, the Endosian alien species finally debuting in live action, John Delancey voicing the alien parent, the Jitterbug, you know, that song being played at the very end and at the dance, that was great. Everything else that's going on in this episode, it was really good. Yeah, and just, yeah, the first two episodes for Season 3 of Strange New Worlds were really good, and yep, look forward to the rest of Season 3, and for me to review the rest of Season 3, yeah. But just, again, a great start for Season 3 with what those first two episodes had to offer, definitely. And what about you guys? What did you think of the first two episodes of Season 3 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Which one did you enjoy the most? Or if you enjoyed both of them, with what the first 2 episodes of Season 3 had to offer, and, where we last left off in Part 1, which being the ending to Season 2, and with it being picked up, and for it being the opener to Season 3, Part 2 and all that, with Episode 2, with what that had to offer, Trelane, and what this episode has to do with Trelane and what he does, screwing things up and making an alternate reality, and just seeing, like, the chemistry between Spock and Chapel's boyfriend and all that, Dr. Corby, and a relationship starting to happen between Ortegas' brother and Uhura, and a bunch of other things that's going on, and with all I've said, just like, yeah. Just again, overall, what do you think of the first 2 episodes of Season 3 of Strange New Worlds with what all I've had to say, my Part 1 review, and yeah, what did you think of my Part 1 review of Season 3 of Strange New Worlds, the first 2 episodes? Leave comments, and give this review video a like, as always. And so, guys, with all that being said, thank you very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed my Part 1 review of Season 3 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Episodes 1 and 2, Hegemony Part 2, and Wedding Bell Blues. More review videos are coming your way. They're going to be awesome. Keep looking forward, and I will see you guys in the next video / review. And, well, continuing on, of course, with reviewing the rest of Season 3 of Strange New Worlds, stay tuned for my Part 2 review of Episodes 3, 4, and 5. Take care, peace out, and live long and prosper.